Do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have not come to destroy them but to fulfill them. For I say to you in truth that heaven and earth shall not pass away before everything in the law is completely fulfilled up to one single iota and one single dot. Matt 5:17-18. Moses. There are two distinct parts to the Mosaic Law, the law of God, promulgated on Mount Sinai, and the civil or disciplinary law, established by Moses. The former is invariable, the latter, appropriate for the customs and character of the people, changes with the times. The law of God is formulated in the 10 following commandments.
1. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other foreign gods before me. You shall make neither a graven image nor any figure of anything that is above in the heavens or below on earth, nor of anything that is in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor shall you render them supreme worship. 2. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. 3. You shall remember to sanctify the Sabbath day. 4. You shall honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God will give you. 5. You shall not kill. 6. You shall not commit adultery. 7. You shall not steal. 8. You shall not render false testimony against your neighbor. 9. You shall not desire your neighbor's wife. 10. You shall desire neither your neighbor's house, nor his servant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor any of the things that belong to him.
This law is for all times and all nations. This it has a divine character. All the others were laws established by Moses, who had to use fear in order to restrain a naturally troublesome and undisciplined people, in the midst of whom he had to combat deep-rooted abuses and prejudices acquired during their slavery in Egypt. In order to give authority to his laws, he had to attribute to them a divine origin, as did all other lawgivers of early peoples. Human authority had to be based on God's authority, but only the idea of a terrible God could impress ignorant men and women, in whom moral sense and the sentiment of a refined justice were still little developed. It is quite obvious that the one who prescribed the commandments, "You shall not kill, you shall not cause harm to your neighbor," could not be self-contradictory by making extermination a duty. The Mosaic laws per se thus had an essentially transitory character. Christ. Jesus did not come to destroy the law, that is, God's law. He came to fulfill it, that is, to develop it, to give it its true meaning and to adapt it to the degree of humankind's advancement. That is why the principle of duty to God and one's neighbor may be found in this law, and which comprises the basis of his doctrine. On the other hand, as for the laws of Moses per se, Jesus modified them profoundly either in form or in substance. He constantly combated the abuse of outward practices and erroneous interpretations, and he could not have reformed them more radically than by reducing them to these words: love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself, and by stating, this is the whole of the law and the prophets. With the words, heaven and earth shall not pass away before everything is fulfilled up to one single iota, Jesus meant that God's law would have to receive its fulfillment, that is, it would have to be practiced all over the earth, in all of its purity, with all of its development and all of its consequences. For what good would it have done to have established this law if it were to remain the privilege of only a few people or even of one sole nation? All humans are God's children and are, without distinction, the object of the same solicitude. Jesus' role, however, was not simply that of a moralistic lawgiver with no other authority than his own word. He came to fulfill the prophecies that had announced his coming. His authority derived from the exceptional nature of his spirit and his divine mission. He came to teach people that true life is not to be found on the earth but in the kingdom of heaven, to teach them the way that leads there and the means of reconciling themselves to God, and to forewarn them regarding the progress of future things for the fulfillment of human destiny. Nonetheless, he did not tell them everything, and on many points he limited himself to sowing the seed of truths that he himself declared could not yet be comprehended. He did speak of all things, but in varying degrees of explicitness. In order to understand the hidden meaning of some of what he said, new ideas and knowledge would have to provide humans the key, and such ideas could not come before the human spirit had acquired a certain degree of maturity. Science would have to contribute strongly to the emergence and development of these ideas, therefore, science would have to be given time to progress. Spiritism. Spiritism is the new science that uses irrefutable proofs to reveal to humans the existence and nature of the spirit world and its relations with the corporeal world. It shows us that the spirit world is not something supernatural, but that it is one of the living and incessantly active forces of nature, the source of a multitude of phenomena hitherto incomprehensible, and for that reason, relegated to the domain of the fantastic and extraordinary. Christ alludes to such relations on several occasions, and that is why many of the things he said have remained unintelligible or wrongly interpreted. Spiritism is the key that enables everything to be easily explained. The law of the Old Testament is personified in Moses, that of the New Testament is personified in Christ. Spiritism is the third revelation of God's law, but it is not personified in any particular individual, rather, it is the product of a teaching given not by one person but by the spirits, who are the voices of heaven, at all points of the earth and through a countless multitude of intermediaries. It is a sort of collective entity entailing a group of beings from the spirit world, each one coming to bring to humans the tribute of its knowledge in order to enable them to know about that world and the fate that awaits them in it. Just as Christ said, "I have not come to destroy the law but to fulfill it," Spiritism says, "I have not come to destroy the Christian law but to fulfill it." Spiritism teaches nothing contrary to what Christ taught, but develops, completes and explains in clear terms for everybody what he stated only in allegorical form. Spiritism has come to fulfill at the foretold time what Christ announced and to prepare the fulfillment of future things. It is therefore the work of Christ, who himself is presiding, as he also announced, over the regeneration that is occurring and who is preparing the reign of the kingdom of God on earth. The alliance between science and religion. Science and religion are the two levers of human intelligence. The former reveals the laws of the material world, the latter reveals the laws of the moral world. But neither, having the same principle, which is God, can contradict the other. If they were to negate each other, one would necessarily be wrong and the other right, because God could not possibly be willing to destroy God's own work. The incompatibility that is thought to exist between these two orders of ideas arises from an erroneous observation and an excess of exclusivity on one side and the other. This has resulted in a conflict giving rise to disbelief and intolerance. The time has come in which Christ's teachings must receive their completion, in which the veil, cast intentionally over some parts of them, must be lifted, in which science ceases to be exclusively materialistic and takes the spiritual element into account, and in which religion ceases to misinterpret the organic and immutable laws of matter. These two forces, supporting each other and advancing together, will lend each other mutual support. Then religion, no longer having to endure the discredit of science, will acquire unshakable power because it will be in accord with reason and will no longer be able to oppose the irresistible logic of the facts. Science and religion were unable to understand each other until today, because, each one examining matters from its own exclusive point of view, they mutually rejected each other. Something was needed to fill the gap that separated them, a mark of union that would bring them close to each other. This mark of union resided in the knowledge of the laws that govern the spirit world and its relations with the corporeal, laws as immutable as those governing the movement of the heavenly bodies and the existence of beings. Once they were proven by experience, these relations caused a new light to dawn, faith turned toward reason, reason found nothing illogical in faith, and materialism was defeated. But in this, as in everything else, there are persons who remain behind until they are swept along by the movement of the whole, which crushes them if they try to resist it instead of surrendering to it. An entire moral revolution is occurring at this time, and it is molding people's spirits. After being prepared for more than 18 centuries, this revolution is nearing its fulfillment, and it will mark a new era for humankind. The consequences of this revolution are easy to foresee. As for social relations, it must bring inevitable changes that no person has the power to oppose, for they are according to God's designs and result from the law of progress, which is one of God's laws.
God is one, and Moses was the Spirit whom he sent on a mission to make him known not only to the Hebrews, but to pagan peoples also. The Hebrew people were the instrument that God used to deliver the divine revelation through Moses and the prophets, and the vicissitudes of these people were meant to impress the eyes and bring down the veil that had hidden the divinity from humankind. God's commandments given through Moses contain the seed of the broadest Christian morality. However, biblical commentaries have restricted their meaning, because, put into practice in all their purity, they would not have been understood. Nevertheless, the 10 Commandments of God remain the shining frontispiece, the beacon that would illumine humankind on the road it was to travel. The morality taught by Moses was appropriate for the state of advancement of the people it was called to regenerate, and these people, semi-primitive with regard to the perfection of their soul, would not have understood that it was possible to worship God by means other than burnt offerings, or that they should forgive an enemy. Their intelligence was remarkable from the materialistic point of view and even from that of the arts and sciences, but it was morally quite backward, and they would never have been converted under the rule of an entirely spiritual religion. They needed a semi-material representation, like the one the Hebrew religion offered them. Hence, burnt offerings spoke to their senses, whereas the idea of God spoke to their spirit. Christ was the initiator of the purest and most sublime morality, the evangelical Christian morality that is to renew the world, bring men and women together, and make them brothers and sisters. It is a morality that is to enable charity and love for one's neighbor to blossom forth in all human hearts and create a common solidarity amongst all humans. In short, it is a morality that is to transform the earth, making it a dwelling place for spirits more highly evolved than those inhabiting it today. It is the law of progress, to which nature is subject, and a law that is fulfilled, and Spiritism is the lever that God is employing to enable humankind to advance. The time has come in which moral ideas must be developed, so that the progress contained in God's designs may be accomplished. These ideas must follow the same route that the ideas of liberty, their forerunners, traveled. However, one should not believe that this development will occur without struggle. No, in order to reach maturity, these ideas need to be discussed and argued about so that they may attract the attention of the masses. Once attention is fixed on them, the beauty and sanctity of Christ's morality will touch people's minds, and they will become interested in a science that provides them with a key to the future life and opens to them the doors to eternal happiness. It was Moses who opened the way. Jesus continued the work. Spiritism shall finish it.
An Israelite Spirit, Mulhouse, 1861.
One day, God, due to his inexhaustible charity, allowed humankind to see the truth dissipate the darkness. That day was the advent of Christ. After the living light, the darkness returned. The world, after the alternatives of truth and obscurity, became lost once again. Then, just like the prophets of the Old Testament, the spirits began to speak and to warn you, the world is being shaken on its very foundations, the thunder shall resound, stand firm. Spiritism is of the divine order since it rests upon the very laws of nature, and you can be certain that everything of a divine order has a great and useful purpose. Your world has lost its way, and science, developing at the cost of moral order and leading you only to material well-being, has reverted to profiting the spirit of darkness. Christians, you know that the heart and love must walk hand in hand with science. The reign of Christ, alas, after 18 centuries, and in spite of the blood of so many martyrs, that reign has not yet come. O Christians, come back to the Master who wishes to save you. Everything is easy for those who believe and love. Love fills them with ineffable joy. Yes, my children, the world is being shaken. The good spirits have told you this more than enough times. Bend under the forewarning breeze of the storm so that you may not be knocked over, that is, prepare yourselves and do not be like the foolish virgins who were taken by surprise at the arrival of the bridegroom. This revolution that is being prepared is more moral than material. The great spirits, the divine messengers, inspire faith so that all of you, enlightened and fervent workers, may make your humble voices heard, for you are only a grain of sand, but without grains of sand there would be no mountains. Hence the words "we are so small" hold no meaning for you. To each his or her mission, to each his or her labor. Do not ants build their republic, and do not imperceptible animalcules 12 raise continents? The new crusade has begun. Apostles of universal peace and not of war, modern street Bernards, look and march ahead. The law of worlds is the law of progress.
Fenelon, Poitiers, 1861.
Saint Augustine is one of the greatest divulgers of Spiritism. He manifests himself almost everywhere. We find the reason for this in the life of this great Christian philosopher, who belongs to the mighty phalanx of the Church Fathers, to whom Christianity owes its most solid basis. Like many others, he was uprooted from paganism, or rather, from the most profound impiety, by the splendor of the truth. When, in the midst of his excesses, he felt in his soul that strange vibration calling him back to himself, enabling him to understand that happiness lay elsewhere than in annoying and fleeting pleasures, when, finally, on his own way to Damascus he too heard the holy voice exclaim, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He exclaimed, my God, forgive me. I believe, I am a Christian." From then on, he became one of the firmest supporters of the gospel. In the famous confessions that this eminent spirit left us, one may read the simultaneously characteristic and prophetic words he uttered after having lost Street Monica: "I am convinced that my mother will return to visit me and give me counsel, revealing to me what awaits us in the future life." What a lesson in these words, and what a brilliant prediction of the future doctrine! This is why today, seeing that the hour has come to divulge the truth that he had predicted, he is its ardent propagator and multiplies himself, so to speak, in order to answer all who call upon him.
Erastus, disciple of St. Paul, Paris 1863. Remark: has St. Augustine therefore come to destroy what he himself built? Certainly not, but like so many others, he sees with the eyes of the Spirit what he could not see as a man. His unconstrained soul sees more clearly and understands what it could not understand before. New ideas have revealed to him the true meaning of certain words. While on earth, he judged matters according to the knowledge he possessed, but when a new light shone upon him, he was able to judge things more wholesomely. It was thus that he had to change his mind regarding incubus and succubus spirits, as well as the anathema that he had launched against the theory of the antipodes. Now that Christianity has appeared to him in all its purity, he can think differently about certain points than when he was alive, but without ceasing to be a Christian disciple. Without renouncing his faith, he can make himself the propagator of Spiritism, because he sees in it the fulfillment of things foreseen. As a herald of Spiritism today, he leads us to a more careful and logical interpretation of the texts. The same is occurring with other spirits who have found themselves in a similar position.